Hi, this is Kurt, and I'm here with a few video blog thoughts on the movie It's a Wonderful Life. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it dozens of times. It's also one of my wife's favorite movies. We watch it together, oftentimes several times each holiday season. Each time I watch it, I cry. It hits me right in the ticker. I've cried a lot more since I had kids. I did not cry as much this time, maybe because I was in the kitchen mixing a drink when George saved Harry, his little brother, from the frozen pond. And because I wasn't on the ride at the beginning of the roller coaster, I didn't have the same emotional attachment. So I have a couple of thoughts about this movie. The first is George's motivation for being the altruist that he is. And I want all of you out there who have fathers to take a moment to think about your fathers and consider what wise and compassionate and strong people they are. And just say, find it in your heart and look in the mirror and say, gee, Dad, I wouldn't be the great person I am today without you. Because George's motivation for a lot of what he did came from his father. The first time that George was faced with a character test, a challenge, was when he realized that Mr. Gower had loaded this prescription for a neighborhood family full of poison. And so in deciding what to do, George ran to see his father, his wise leader of his family, and he found his dad embroiled in this argument with Mr. Potter, the capitalist villain of It's a Wonderful Life. And not only did he see his father fighting back against Potter's evil, but George jumped in with a few jibes of his own and attacked Potter as well. So then George runs back to Gower's office and tells Gower, look, you've made a mistake. There's poison in those capsules. And as a reward for his stepping forward to try to help his family, Gower beats him bloody on his deaf ear. And so this kind of sets up a pattern in the film. Whenever George is faced with a decision where he has to make an altruistic choice about whether to protect the town's interest or protect his own interest, he's always met with a setback. Something that's disappointing and unpleasant always happens to George. The next time this comes up is when George wants to leave for college, and he can't because his father dies. Then his brother comes back from college, and George thinks, at last I can leave, I can travel, I can realize my dreams, I can find my fate abroad in this world. And he stays because his brother has got a job opportunity and has eloped with this hot blonde co-ed he met in college. He finally does get married and is about to leave on his honeymoon when there is a run on the bank. And by the way, when he is facing that crowd of people who are panicking in his bank, ready to withdraw all their investments and destroy the savings and loan and destroy the only source of financial independence in the town, the first thing he does is he takes a long look at a portrait of his father, and then he goes out and he talks them in off the ledge with the support of his wife, who jumps right in to help him and is a player in saving that bank and saving that town. And so here we have George. All he wants to do is get out of Bedford Falls. And at each turn, he is disappointed. And in fact, at one point, his adversary, Mr. Potter, even says this to him, George Bailey, you're the only person in town who hates the building and loan almost as much as I do. And you can see from the look on George's face, he knows it's true. He does hate the building and loan because at every turn, his obligation to the building and loan has disappointed what he believes is the realization of his dreams and his true fate, which is to leave town and travel and find himself in the world. And so this tension is built throughout the movie until we come to the key portion of It's a Wonderful Life. This is the part of the movie that everybody remembers. This is the part of the movie that everybody talks about. It's the part of the movie where the angel comes down from heaven and shows George what the world would look like if he had never been born. What's interesting to me is that this all happens in the third act of the film. And this is a long movie. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And the heart of the movie comes in what is a relatively short space of time. 15 or 20 minutes of the film. And also, this is one of the first times in the movie that we have essentially condensed real time, where it's about 5:45 in the evening, and George realizes that his uncle has lost these deposits. And so by 6:15 or 6:30, maybe 6:45, again, all in real time, he is on that bridge staring into space, considering suicide. And so then this angel comes down from heaven, right, and says, here's what your life would look like if you had never been born. And Bedford Falls is a hive of despair. It's full of brothels and strip joints and bars. The community that he built, all the houses that he built, were never there. They're an empty graveyard. He sees it. He doesn't believe it. He says it can't be true. He says, take me to my home. Take me home. None of his friends recognize him. That doesn't rattle George's cage or shock him out of his disbelief. He goes to his home, the home that he built with his family, finds that it's an abandoned, decrepit ruin. That doesn't shock him, into a realization of what's going on. He visits his mother. His mother doesn't recognize him. She turns her back on him, treats him like a stranger. That doesn't shock him. What finally trips the trigger for George is when he sees his wife. And she's a lonely old spinster, and she's never known love, and she's never had a family, and she's one of the few good people that lives in this rotten town, and she doesn't recognize him. And he's so desperate to see her and desperate to touch her and be with her that she is completely freaked out by him, doesn't recognize him, faints. It's at that point that George runs back to that bridge and goes to that rail where this whole sequence started, and he cries and he begs God, please give me my life back. Please let me have my life back. Please, God, please. And that's when his prayer is answered. And he's brought back home. And who saves him? Who saves him in this film from despair and ruin and financial tragedy? His wife does. His wife does by organizing the rest of the community, and they all step up to help him, right? So I think what Frank Capra does is he sets up a red thematic herring. And this is George's desire to leave town. George believes that he has been thwarted from his fate by his responsibility to Bedford Falls. And he believes, like I think many of us do, that our true selves lie out there beyond the horizon. That what is in store for us in life is not here where we are, but it's out there somewhere in a place we haven't discovered, a place we don't know about, a place we need to get to. And that is not George's fate. And I wonder if it's also not the fate for so many of us. In fact, every good thing that happened in George's life happened because he stayed in Bedford Falls. The heart of his existence, his family, his community, all happened because he stayed in Bedford Falls. And so I wonder for a lot of us who have kind of looked out there and wondered what might have been if I had gone out there to find myself. What super creature might I have evolved into? If by taking that choice, by taking that path, by making that choice, if in fact we would not have realized our fate, but turned our back on our true fate. And in fact, possibly, I think, certainly in the case of George Bailey, his life belonged in Bedford Falls. It was his destined path to stay in Bedford Falls and roll up his sleeves and keep fighting against Potter and try to make that city the best possible place he could. And so I think for myself and for many of us, maybe this is our fate. Maybe our job, our destined path, our fated burden is to stay right where we are and try to make this world the best possible place it can be. So thank you, Frank Capra, and I hope that all of you have a wonderful life.